let's talk about Godkiller. I'm not done yet, but I'm halfway. And honestly, I'm mostly bored and I'm very confused. So, we're following 4 characters. We have our main character who's in the prologue, Kissin. And she has like a longer name, so I'll get there in a second. The prologue is about her, and it is just about her losing her family and her leg. Very traumatic things. But I don't understand why we started the story there, because we could have just had her discuss that with someone else, show it through, like, we're already, like, hinting that she doesn't want to talk about it to other characters. We could have literally just done this same thing and had her, like, explain it later, had it be revealed to us. There was literally no point. There was no world building done in the prologue. And it genuinely does nothing to explain her character other than that she's edgy. And when I checked out the author's bio, it says that she likes stabby women. So, it was just to set up that Kissin is the character that she wants us to, like, understand why she's the way she is. Which we could have done in other ways. I don't like prologues typically in general, so I would have preferred if the prologue had given us some world building. Why is there this, like, war between, like, people who worship different gods? I can, like, guess, like, a modern world historical reason, but give me your world's reason, because your world's reason it's not clear, and I genuinely don't understand. When the gods are very real things, why do we need, who, like, physically exist in the world, why do we need to have this competition between them when we already have it set up where everyone is very everyone believes in multiple gods. We have a very rich pantheon of gods that physically exist in this world and in this realm. And I don't understand why we needed to have a battle between the fire god and the ocean god, but not even between the gods, but just between the people who worship them, when we're in a fishing town. We're in a fishing town. Why do the people in the fishing town choose to destroy the people who worship the ocean god? I genuinely don't. That's what I need you to explain to me. Why did these people who worship the fire god decide that the fire god was better for their fishing village that subsists on fish and the income from fishing? Why did they decide the fire god was better? Tell me why. Tell me why. Okay, so that's the prologue, and I'm frustrated, clearly, because the dog just came over to make sure I was okay. So that's Kissin. She is our Godkiller, and she is very closed off, doesn't trust anyone, and given that she is now 26 and has lived in different experiences and has, like, her own little community of people, and this all happened to her when she was 11, I need the in-between on why she is still like this. Because it just seems like the other part of her backstory that we do get in, like, conversation, which is why I said we could have got this in conversation, is that when she went to the orphanage, she was raised to kind of be, like, a pickpocket and a grifter for, like, the woman who raised her and her, like, adopted family who were other orphaned, I don't know if that's the appropriate word to use, but other people who have also lost their families, all other young girls who had all lost their families. And so those 2 now adult women have become her, like, her found family. And so she's kind of mean to everyone, including them. And so it comes off as someone who's playing D&D for the first time and has made a rogue. And they're like, oh, well, I'm edgy and don't trust anyone because I lost my entire family and I learned to pick pockets at a young age to survive, so I became a rogue. Like, it is so edgelord that I am like, I'm done with her. I don't care about her at all. She hasn't given me a single reason to care about her. And so, okay, so she's a Godkiller, and we don't necessarily know why, but her whole thing is to not trust the gods. That leads me to the gods, and why I don't understand the world building around the gods. Every single god craves a blood sacrifice. They don't start off that way, but they all end up that way. And I don't understand why every single god, whether it's a god of the crop or a god of like keeping your wood dry. Why every single, because she mentions that one specifically, and like other minor gods, even minor gods will eventually crave a blood sacrifice, and that is something I genuinely don't understand. It makes all of your gods the same. And to have a rich pantheon like this that has little gods of the home and the hearth and large gods of ideologies like war, why do they all crave the same thing? Because that's not how things work. And she claims to have studied mythologies, and I'm like, okay, if you studied mythology, why is every single one of your gods the same? So that frustrates me. And that leads us to Inara, who is our 12-year-old girl who speaks the most adult out of everybody in the book. And I get it, she's raised a noble, but still. She's 12. So she has a soul bind with a lesser god, a god of white lies. Now, here is the thing. I was mentioning this to my boyfriend last night because I always complain to him about books that I don't like. And we have these great discussions. He is a history nerd. He spends most of his time listening to history. Lately, though, he's been listening to a lot of lore of Star Wars and Warhammer 40K and all of the world building that goes into those super rich, well thought out, especially before Disney got Star Wars, worlds. Sorry, I should not disparage the mouse. So, he didn't understand, because as soon as I mentioned that this little girl who was a noble has a soul bind with a god of white lies, he said, that's a perfect setup for a cult leader. And I went, oh my God, it is. But she's clearly not going to use it that way, because the thing that we have in the world also is that we have characters, external characters, that flush out our villages, who some of them still want to worship the gods. So god worship is banned in this world now after this war against the gods. The king banned all gods. Okay, so he banned all gods, and this is where I would understand if he banned the worship of gods and set himself up as a god. But he has not done that. So he has not replaced any of this religious worship with anything else. He's given them nothing. And so the way that would work, when you have a world that very much relies on the gift of gods for their economy, for their stability, for their survival, that yeah, you're going to have minor peasant rebellions because they're going to be the first affected and the most strongly affected. And eventually you're going to have your larger, wealthier houses affected because their peasantry are no longer bringing in any money, because we are very much set up as a medieval hierarchy. So we're starting to have that. And she hasn't really explained that. That's just things I understand from other books. Because now we're starting to have a rebellion of the higher houses. However, the king somehow knows there's a rebellion, but doesn't know which houses. So that whole conversation between the king and our third POV, Elo or Elo, I don't know how to pronounce it. He also has a longer name because we go back and forth between using people's shortened names and their long names constantly in the text. And I'm like, just pick one and stick with it, and then randomly have, for a actual contextual reason, have someone use their full name versus their shortened name instead of just random, because people don't do that. And okay, so where was I? Elo. Elo is friends with the king. And so here's the thing. Elo, I'm going to call him Elo because I don't know if it's Elo or Elo. Elo didn't like that the king banned god worship. So he refused to continue to be his knight. Now, in most worlds, that would mean exile or capital punishment, right? Because you can't just refuse a knightship anymore. But because he's the king's friend, apparently, he gets to. So the king lets him, even though he openly tells the king, I don't agree with this, multiple times in the one interaction we see. And he says, I've told you this before. All he had to do was give up his wealth and his noble status, essentially, and his lands. He gave up everything, but somehow still had enough money to become a baker and buy a bakery in a wealthy city. And now he has all of this silver to go on this journey. And okay, sure. So the king still confides in him. That's the thing I don't understand. He is someone who could very well be leading a rebellion, and the king is still confiding in him. That does not make any sense from a protect your ass from insurrection standpoint. She's put in so many little loops where we can easily have an overthrow. And when the king is worried that he's about to be overthrown, he goes to a guy who doesn't agree with any of his policies and tells him to help him. And that doesn't make any fucking sense to me at all. So, then the last POV we get is from the little god of white lies. And I like him. He's the only character that makes sense because he is self-involved. He only cares about his survival and a little bit about Inara's. He does seem to actually care for her, but he also cares about her survival because her death means his death. So he is able to use this Godspeak thing. Very much reminds me of how Terry Pratchett's death, and oh my god, I just realized she's a Terry Pratchett fan because she posted about it on her author bio. So Terry Pratchett's death character can use his voice, and Susan, his granddaughter, can use this voice as well, which basically commands people to do hear it in their head, and it commands them to like do what they're told. Essentially, it's why Susan is a very good teacher and a very good governess because she can use the death voice on the kids. And okay, so she definitely picked that a little bit from there. Because what the God of White Lies does is he speaks his Godspeak into their heads, and it's very Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for. And people are like, oh, those aren't the droids I was looking for. Like, very much that. Apparently that is a white lie. Okay, so now that you understand, I hope the characters, maybe I need one of those board things, because I am so fucking irritated at this goddamn book already. And I'm only 136 fucking pages out of like 300 and something. Like, little under... Ugh. Okay, so... They go on this pilgrimage to go to the dead city where they killed all the gods at, because the gods do still exist there, and the knights try to keep people from going to the going on the pilgrimage because you're not allowed to worship the gods. I've talked myself up into like a heartburn episode. Okay, so people go on this pilgrimage, and they are not supposed to be going on the pilgrimage because they're going on the pilgrimage to the gods to either ask for a blessing, or in one case, some of the characters are going to have a blessing removed. And this was really forced in, and I did not like it. And I am extremely, extremely pro-choice, pro-bodily autonomy. And this pissed me off, okay? Because it was just like shoved in there. So one of the couples, they're going to see the gods to ask for a fertility blessing to be removed, because in the war against the gods, the god of midwifery was killed. So this woman is like, bearing children is extremely dangerous, and I don't want to be fertile. Like, I want that blessing removed. And I was like, okay, so you can be blessed with fertility, like abundant fertility, or you can just be like regularly fertile, or you can be infertile, or you can be sterile. Okay, so sterility and infertility are not the same thing. They're just not. I will put some definitions up, but they are not the same thing. Sterile means you can never have children. Like, that is what sterile means. Infertile does not mean the same thing. So to have the blessing of fertility removed does not mean that you are suddenly sterile. You would need to have a curse of sterility in order for that to work. So that kind of bothered me a little bit, but I can deal with that, okay? Like, because clearly they weren't going to be main characters, it didn't matter. But the woman says to her husband, you know, maybe this journey is a little too dangerous because they've just been attacked by a summon of a god. So the wild gods can summon things that are kind of like demons. And they had just attacked, and Kissin and Elo had killed it. And everyone was deciding if they were going to keep going or turn back. And so the woman is like to her husband, are you sure we want to keep on this path? Like, it could be dangerous. And he's like, well, it's dangerous for you to have kids because, you know, he had his like sister died in childbirth, and then her cousin died in childbirth. And so they've seen people die during childbirth. Very real concern even today. So look at the stats. So she says, well, there are drugs I could take. Like there's herbs, basically. There's herbs I could take that would prevent it, because every fantasy world has some sort of birth control. Those would also be dangerous for you. And she's like, but are you sure you want to have like the possibility to ever have children be completely wiped away? And this conversation is going on in the background of other things happening, which is very weird to have this like serious conversation that is not necessarily important to the story, because these characters just kind of disappear after this. Like, this is not important to the story, but we're having this conversation, apparently. So he's like, well, it's your body, your choice. That's what I always say. And I'm like, did we have, like, why are we shoving this in here? And then she says something else again. She's like, well, I don't want to take the choice away from you. And that is a very, like, valid conversation to have with your partner. If one of you wants kids and the other one doesn't, you have to decide who gets to have what they want and who gets to not have what they don't want. That is a very serious conversation, and one people should be having before they're fucking married. Anyway, thoughts on that side. She starts to feel a little bit of emotion, and the lesser god of white lies, whose name is Skediseth. So Skedi. And I keep wanting to say Scotty because it's spelt the same way, just with an E instead of an A. So Skedi uses his god voice, and he's like, basically says something like, you have to tell her that you'll be fine because you're making her feel guilty, and you can't be making her feel guilty. So he like fixes that conversation, and there's like another side conversation, and he like tells someone to say something else, and like all these little like kind of white lies that patch over things. And to be fair, covering your emotions for someone else is not necessarily the best way to handle that situation. But if we're trying to frame the god as, you know, not necessarily morally correct, then yeah. But that conversation was like half a page. So I just drew it out to explain, because I added in extra context. And I'm just like, did we need that? Did we need that? And this causes the god to grow bigger. So normally he's like the little size of a mouse, and he looks, I guess, kind of like a squirrel / rabbit with like antlers. He sounds very adorable, and I want one. But when he gets like confident, he like grows in size, like to like fox size, rabbit size, kitten size. Sometimes when he's feeling playful, like he changes in size. So here's the other thing. Okay, last thing, and then I'm gonna go take the dog on an adventure walk because he is getting impatient. Words. Okay, so gods in this world can be killed if you destroy their shrine. You have to like, you can destroy their shrine, but most of the time they will protect it, so you usually have to also kill the god. But destroying the shrine is a good way to make sure they come back until someone starts worshiping them again. They're never truly dead, which is why like they destroyed the shrines. I keep wanting to say shines, and I know what a fucking shrine is. They destroy the shrines and then banned people from worshiping so that the shrines wouldn't be rebuilt. But gods are always attached to their shrines, except for Skedi is somehow bound to Inara, very much like a Phil Pullman demon. Very, very much like one. And I just don't understand why. I haven't quite figured out yet why it's like this, so we'll find out as it goes. But the world building doesn't make sense on why gods are attached to shrines. A shrine does not make a god. And I guess it could in this world, but I genuinely don't understand how you can destroy the shrine and destroy the god, but the god isn't permanently destroyed because people could rebuild the shrine, and that brings back the god. But they also don't need a shrine to bring back the god. They can bring back the god by worshiping it, but apparently in this world you can only worship at a shrine, but you can also offer prayers, and that'll cause the god to appear, but it's like assumed that as soon as someone does a prayer, they'll start building a shrine. Stop. And I'm like, why wouldn't people just not have shrines? But apparently shrines can be as simple as like a penny in your drawer. Like, what? We're like, we don't understand our world, so we're constantly backtracking to try to make it make sense instead of, this feels like a rough draft. So I don't understand the world building around the religions. It's like she had an idea, but then didn't flesh it out and then wrote a book surrounding the idea of the gods without understanding her religious structure. And if we weren't focused so much on it, I would not care if it was fleshed out. I genuinely wouldn't. But the thing is, even in books that are simple and fun, like I just finished Paladin's Grace, okay? Before that, Sword Heart. We have some small interaction with some of the other religions. Do we know everything about them? No. But we know the basics of each religion and what gods they worship and why. And we not understand how those gods are worshipped and what those gods represent to the different religions. And we understand the connection that religion has on the overall society. And I don't understand why this book can't do that when it wanted so much to focus on gods. If you're going to focus on gods as a main part of your goddamn book to the point where it's in the name, why are you not giving me an explanation for how the religion works? And I'm mad because I was really excited for this book because it's supposed to be based on mythologies, or all these things. This has been I Rant About Books. I'll talk to you later. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Kissin has just revealed that she was a sacrifice, which is what the prologue was. And this is where I'm saying, we didn't need to see it. We could have just had it here. She says, my own people burned me and my family, all of us, because they thought it would serve them well. People we'd grown up with, eaten with, starved with. She could have just kept that right here. We didn't need to see it in the prologue. The prologue we would have been better served seeing something of the war, seeing something of how the king has some sort of God's curse, blessing, whatever around his heart. That would have been a better prologue. That would have contributed more to the story. This prologue of her having her whole family killed was unnecessary when it could be revealed just like this with more impact, because we as the reader would not have known until everyone else found out. Impact. Impact is important when you have something like this. There's literally no point to reveal it the way that it's revealed because it's not impactful for us. We already know. We literally already know. Why? Why? Genuinely. Why did we need that scene? The dog doesn't like me getting upset about this book. It was unnecessary. Okay, I'll give it this. Aaron has now decided he is going to become a god king, apparently. So, it's just that it's such a weird way to go about it. Like, he could have very easily just been like, I am your god now, like, or God, I don't. So he's making a pact with the gods to have Elo sacrifice himself so that he can become a god, so that Aaron can become a god, and it just seems very convoluted. And I guess it was supposed to be a twist, but the fact that it's what the king should have done from the beginning makes it not a twist. You know? I'm not surprised. I'm just like, why did it take so long? It's been years, apparently, since the war. So, why did it take so long? Okay. I finished. So the last 50%, we have them traveling to the town of Blendarin, or something like that they're supposed to go visit. This is where the gods still live, because I guess it was like a major city, and there's shrines everywhere, so it's really hard to get rid of the gods from it. So if you want to acknowledge a god, you have to go to this city, but it's guarded by knights, but the knights let people in all the time. So we have like some weird things along the way. I think I mentioned before. So we have Skedi decides that he would rather be with Elo. Jesus, I forgot his name for a second. He'd rather be with Elo because Kissin is not safe. Obviously, Kissin's not safe for him. He's a god. She's a Godkiller. Makes sense. So he manipulates Inara, gets in her head, uses his own voice through her mouth to sow discord through lies. At some point, Inara is able to push him out of her head and break his will so that she can stop the fighting. Okay? So then we keep going. We have to fight more shadow things, and after that, Elo gets hurt and trying to save Kissin, and then Skedi jumps in and knocks over one of the shadow wolves so that Kissin can kill it, and that redeems him a little bit, and Inara decides she'll try and forgive him, but it's going to take her a while. So then we move on, and we're finally we discover that it's Elo that's cursed, and I explained this part, I think. Okay, so Elo's cursed. So then we go into the city, and when we go into the city, we meet with An, A-A-N. I just kept calling her Anne, in a Leslie Knope's voice. Anyway, so she is a water god, and she is one that Kissin is okay with. So Kissin asks her for help and advice, and Skedi and Inara ask for how they can be disentangled, and essentially they can't unless another god wants to give up part of their shrine for Skedi, but with everything going on, it's unlikely. The other way is that he can reveal himself and get more worshippers. The more worshippers he gets, the stronger he'll be, and he'll be able to leave Inara. But it seems unlikely. That's essentially what we get told. And then we get told that there's something else about Inara that we don't know, and something about Skedi's past that we don't know. He has memories of being flung from the water onto a ship. Inara seems to have some extra strength. The god calls her the Unraveler. And then Elo decides he needs to have alone time with An, and so Kissin asks Skedi to go listen, and Skedi hears that Elo needs a sacrifice. And despite everything that Elo has done, they all decide that sacrifice must be one of them. It can't possibly not be. So they try to escape Elo. They can't. And then Elo kind of implies that he's going to sacrifice himself. So Kissin drags him away and fucks him, because apparently that's going to make him change his mind. Spoiler, it doesn't. So he decides to get up early and go on anyway and call forth the fire god, and it just so happens that it's the same fire god that killed Kissin's family. So Kissin tracks him there, but before Kissin gets there, and Inara following Kissin, we get this reveal that the king wanted to become a god, so he made a pact with the gods that if and when Elo sacrifices himself, the king can become a god. And we get it revealed that he's the one that had Inara's family burned down because Inara's mother was the only one who could have stood in his way, apparently. Apparently, this one noble lady is the only person that could have stood in his way, and so he had the whole family killed. So now we know that Inara is not safe in this world. So Kissin decides to take on the fire god Heseth on her own and makes everybody leave. They battle, and she plunges her into the sea, but they have to tumble off a cliff to do it. So Inara and Elo see this happen from a distance, and they're like, she's gone, we gotta go. So then they realize that the shadow demons, the shadow doggies, are coming tonight. And Inara discovers that if she looks hard enough at Elo's curse, she can see the lines of thread that make it a knot. And she is able to place her hand on it and disentangle it and pull it from his skin and feed it to the shadow puppies so that they destroy themselves. So at the end of that scene, Inara goes, I am dangerous. Girl, you've done nothing but help people. How are you dangerous? I don't understand this jump in like going from, oh, I can help, I can help, I can help, to being, I am dangerous. Dangerous to who, my guy? So then we jump to Kissin, and Kissin is like plunging into the depths of the ocean and wanting to agree, like, ask her ocean god from the beginning of her story to actually go ahead and save her life. And that's the end of the book. And I feel robbed. I feel robbed. This book was full of grammar issues. It was full of spelling. Like, I found 2 or 3 spelling issues. There was that weird ass sentence. There were times where we used one apostrophe and then a quotation on the other side to do a quotation, or the other way around. The world building was trash. I gave it a 2. Overall, there was like acceptable structure, but it was just shiny things thrown on that structure. Like, there was nothing of substance here. And I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. It's so boring. Anyway, the internet has led me astray again. And I'm very disappointed. This better be my one bad book this month or I'm going to be pissed. So, basically, this has been, thanks, I hate it. I read Godkiller, so you don't have to. So, please let my next book be better. I can't keep doing this shit. Why are we rushing out books without giving them proper editors? Who did not catch that sentence? I can't let... What was it? Hold on. Kissin wasn't going to let him stupid that easily. Who let that sentence go? I can't.